I, Sirris, do hereby serve as your faithful knight, wherever, whenever I am needed. My loyalty shall never waver. If I may ever be of assistance, I am your knight forever and true. Blessing of the moon upon your journey.
Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Mont, and in this video, we'll be talking about a character from Dark Souls 3. 3, in fact, a young warrior and her grandparents. This being Dark Souls, I expect you already know that this story has no happy ending. As with Siegmeyer of Katarina and his little Lyn, Lucatiel of Mira and her brother, or even Gascoigne and his family in Yharnam, there's little joy to be found here. Yet, we'll have a look at it all the same, and see what answers we might come up with. It is, of course, Sirris of the Sunless Realms. As usual, let's start with names. Sirris and Hodrick, or Hodrick in particular. Sirris appears to be an extremely rare name if there is any meaning to it. I was unable to find it. It is possible, of course, that Sirris stems from the name Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star in our night sky, known as the dog star for its constellation, Canis Major. It comes from a Greek word meaning glowing, and some also link it to the god Osiris. Other than it sounding a little like Osiris, the consumed king, and the fact that Sirris comes from the Sunless Realms, implying night when stars are most visible, there doesn't seem to be any significant meaning here. How about Hodrick? In real life, Hodrick is almost exclusively a surname, and although Dark Souls certainly doesn't need to follow our real-world naming conventions, I believe that, like Hawkwood, Hodrick is his surname, and by connection that of Sirris, but that is by no means confirmed. As for its meaning, it could well come from the name Roderick and Hodrick, itself meaning famous power, Hrod meaning fame, and Rick meaning power. And as usual, please excuse my pronunciation. But who is Sirris? Well, she puts it thusly.
I am Sirris of the Sunless Realms, former servant of the divinity. Duties we each bear, but one's duty is a solitary affair. I doubt we've much to gain from fraternization. Blessing of the moon upon your journey.
There's a few things we can take from that. First up, the Sunless Realms. Could the Sunless Realms and Irithyll be one and the same? It would seem possible given that Irithyll is a city of moon worshippers, home to Gwyndolin and the divinity. But then, whilst I am certain that Sirris is referring to Gwyndolin when she speaks of divinity and moon blessings and so forth, why would she alone use the term Sunless Realms when everyone else speaks of Irithyll as, well, Irithyll? Could it be that these Sunless Realms are lands further still, that worship Gwyndolin? To put it one way, are the Sunless Realms the New Londo and Astora to Irithyll's Anor Londo? I think that would make sense, as she doesn't say Sunless Realm, but Realms. And although this is a very tangential link, Hodrick's shield is near identical to the Mirror shield of Dark Souls 2. Could Mira have become one of these Sunless Realms that worship the moon? Mayhaps, but then why do we have no reference of that on the Mira set, which exists in the game, and merely remarks that the Mira set is worn by knights sent on journeys? It makes no mention on whether or not Mira exists to this day or not. That said, there is one line from the Mira set that, whilst probably intended as more a reference to Lucatiel than to Sirris, certainly does bear some relevance to our Moon Knight. Knights travel afar to fulfill their sacred duties, but few are ever able to deliver on their vows. So whether the Sunless Realms are Irithyll, Mira, or somewhere else entirely, I'll let you decide. Maybe it's coming in the DLC. We can say for certain that Sirris comes from these lands to Lothric, and that she is a Darkmoon Knight of some descript. She describes herself as former servant of the divinity, and yet she still employs Darkmoon miracles and still hunts down black phantoms. Rosaria's fingers are her sworn enemies. Her armor set tells us that Sunless Knights serve the Nameless Moon. Does she not specifically know if Gwyndolin is the name lost in the Sunless Realms, even if the practice of worship survives? That might further imply that these Sunless Realms are not located in the Boreal Valley. She still offers us moon blessings though, and professes that she is bound by duty. That duty would appear to be putting down Rosaria's fingers and her grandfather Hodrick to let him rest in peace. While she still has faith in Gwyndolin presumably, maybe she forsook her role as servant in order to see this done. Or maybe she learned of Sullivan's usurpation. Either way, she is here both to hunt down invaders and put her grandfather to rest. And briefly before we look at Hodrick, let's consider why she is sworn to destroy Rosaria's fingers.
Yes, I see. An arrant finger you've become. Very well. I will cut each finger from the hand.
In Dark Souls, the Dark Moon Blades were sworn to hunt down the foes of our lords, to punish those who sinned in effect. As of Dark Souls 3, that covenant of invaders belongs to Rosaria, and Rosaria herself has some connection to the royal family of Anor Londo, it would appear. Her soul is manifest in the miracle, Bountiful Sunlight, once a miracle of Guinevere. Whilst the fingers do not seem to be all evil, it could make sense that if Rosaria is an exiled or disgraced member of the royal family, the Dark Moon would see her and her fingers put down. But let's move on to Hodrick, who is certainly no finger.
This pit is for hollows, and for the occasional madman fond of piling up victims. You've better things to do, I'd hope.
Leader of the Mound Makers and first invader I ever encountered in Dark Souls 3, Hodrick is a peculiar chap. We know precious little about him. Sirris seeks to put him down, and Hodrick himself is not entirely hollow, given that he can recall Sirris upon his death, but is he evil? A special bone collected by members of the Covenant of Mound Makers, discovered in the corpses of their victims. Only one such bone is found in the vertebrae, and the Mound Makers believe it to be a shackle of the gods. In their minds, each victim is another connection, an addition to the family. So far as Hodrick is concerned, this bone is proof of the shackles of the gods, and if our Holy Knight is of the Sunless Realms, seems to me that at some point he discovered this truth and gave up his faith, believing it all a sham. Maybe he was in Lothric, putting down invaders when he stumbled across this supposed truth and took it upon himself to release all he could from the shackles of the gods. Or indeed, perhaps he's just insane. There's one other thing to think about in regards to a Holy Knight. The Dream Chaser's ashes. Umbral ash of one who dreamt of joining the Undead Legion. With this, the Shrine Handmaid will prepare new items. In the end, the Dream Chasers who wandered aimlessly in the rotted forest found a sense of fulfillment. On its own, there's very little to remark upon, but this ash has a connection with Hodrick, Sirris, and the Shrine Handmaid, for if we hand it over, it can enable the next step in the Sirris questline, and prompt this dialogue from the Handmaid.
Ashen one, what woeful umbral ash is this? This barren dust, stuff of a fool, won't yield aught. Where didst thou happen upon the stuff? Tell me for the sport. Oh yes, I see. Clinging to lofty dreams in this dying world, more's the pity. It must come from one most foolish indeed. Wouldst thou not agree?
I believe there are 3 individuals that the Dream Chaser's ashes could be referring to: Hodrick, Sirris, or another member of their family. Why? Well, it is likely that the Shrine Handmaid is in fact Hodrick's wife and grandmother of Sirris. That information comes from the unique green blossom that you can purchase from her at a certain point in the game. The brief attached message suggests that it was a gift. Goodbye, dear grandmother. I will visit grandfather in the Pit of Hollows. Without a doubt, that is a message from Sirris, but was it for the handmaid? If so, why is she selling it? Let us consider both sides, for the sake of argument. First up, maybe Sirris left this on a grave, and the Handmaid, knowing how rare budding green blossom is, took it to sell to us. A possibility, although unlikely, I feel. Why? Because of the Dream Chaser's ash, which also links together Sirris and the Handmaid. And let us not forget that the Handmaid could have once been a priestess of Lothric at some point. But then, why is she selling it if Sirris is her granddaughter? Remember how she remarked on the Dream Chaser as a fool? That both helps and discredits this. On the one hand, the Handmaid could have no interest in Sirris and Hodrick, thinking them both fools. On the other hand, it is possible that, in her undead state, she is beginning to hollow and has forgotten Sirris entirely, thus selling the item as it has no meaning, no significance to her. Of course, the dialogue from the ash implies that she remembers quite well. As for the ash itself, if it belongs to Sirris or Hodrick, that would be a little confusing, seeing as both of them are alive, and we only ever obtain ashes from dead characters. Could it be a brother of Sirris who wished to join the Legion, or some other family member? That would make more sense to me, but it would also be a little odd to include yet another family member with no point other than to bring up the connection. Yet, a character who still lives should have no ashes for us to claim. What do you think? Either way, that is the story of Sirris. She came to Lothric to hunt invaders, including one Creighton, another link to Mirror, as it happens, and to see her grandfather put to rest. Should you follow her quest through to completion, she will thank you for your assistance and pledge herself to you, meaning she has no desire to return to the Sunless Realms and take up the mantle of servant to the gods once more. And once the twin princes of Lothric have been put down, her body is found by her grandfather's grave. It would appear that perhaps she took her own life, mayhaps as a means to end things on her own terms, rather than become a mad hollow. Hodrick, whilst he can be crushed by the curse-rotted Greatwood, it appears that he survives in the world of Sirris for some time. And the Handmaid? Why, she just sits and watches, oblivious or uncaring, and I'm not sure which is worse.
Good night, Grandad.